Scream 6. I'm just gonna go all in on this thing with the spoilers. I'll try to talk about the film and my opinions about the film as thoroughly and as articulately as I can. Here we go. The movie begins with Laura Crane, played by Samara Weaving, and she's waiting for a date. And phone rings as usual with these openings. You know it's Ghostface even though it don't sound like Ghostface. It's like, oh, he's using the voice modulator, I think.
Is this what he... Dewey's got our voices.
The character, this woman, goes into this alley and then she's just standing there, and then this person on the phone reveals themselves to be Ghostface, voiced by Roger Jackson. Even the Ghostface voice says, yeah, you just walked down a dark alley. That's your first mistake. And she's just standing there. Then Ghostface pops out of nowhere. And at this point, you're like, okay, this is the opening, you know, classic Scream, random kill, boom. Here we go. And then he slashes her off screen, but you see the blood splatter on his mask, which is a nice shot. And it continues to linger on Ghostface. And I'm like, huh, what's happening here? How come we haven't seen the opening title? This is the first kill. And then it lingers on Ghostface, and then Ghostface like starts examining the person he just stabbed. And then Ghostface takes off his mask. And the big reveal. Boston! I was shocked. I was like, huh, they're going to reveal the killers at the beginning of the film? That's very interesting. They've never done that before. It'd be interesting to like know who the killer is throughout the whole movie and then see how the writers and the directors work that out. I'd love to see that because that's not what happens here. But it's a very intriguing opening.
Jason!
His character's name is Jason. Jason goes back to his apartment, and then his friend Greg, who is also participating in the killings with him, calls him up on his phone talking like Roger Jackson's Ghostface. And they start having a conversation, and Jason's kind of freaked out like, who is this and stuff. And it was nice. It was nice. Since this movie takes place in New York, there's a moment where Jason sits down on the chair. Jason is describing how he killed Laura Crane. And the camera is just lingering on him. And I think it's kind of zooming in. And we just see his face. They don't cut away. He's describing it. So the performance here from this actor and the directing from these directors here is just mwah, it's the chef's kiss. It's fantastic. I love all of this stuff. So he's describing like, oh yeah, you know, she didn't feel human. She just felt like a piece of meat to me. And I was just like, damn, man, like that's crazy. And then it's like, hey, Halloween, you keep wanting to know about killers and why they kill. Well, here you go. Here's the way that you were supposed to do it. You know, Scream does it better and trying to analyze that, you know? And then so we get our little hide and go seek. And at this point, I'm like, bro, if I was Jason, I'd say, you know what? I'm not playing this game, and I'd just hang up the phone. Like, stop playing Ghostface games, bro. That's how you get killed. But yeah, he plays along, and then he opens the fridge, and this is the most goriest Scream ever, because dude just opens the fridge, and his friend Greg's all hacked up in there with his head cut off and limbs just all up in the refrigerator. Ghostface comes in, and he stabs him, it's like a bunch of times, and it's gruesome. He's like, what about my movie, or what about our movie? And then Ghostface says the funniest line that I ever heard. He says, who gives a fuck about movies? And then he stabs him, and then we have our proper opening. We meet our main character from the Scream requel in 2022, Sam Carpenter. I feel like they really dive deeper into these characters. They have more personality. You know, they're just not there for cannon fodder. And so we see Sam Carpenter in here, and she's talking to her therapist, and she's expressing herself. You know, she's like, it felt right stabbing Richie, and then people think she orchestrated the whole thing, which could lead, and I heard they're making, you know, Scream 7. Obviously they're gonna make a trilogy, duh. But, you know, there's some little tiny hints that, hey, we could go in a certain direction, because she is a psycho. Her dad was a psycho. It's, hereditary, I guess. But she's expressing herself to her therapist. And as soon as she expresses herself 100%, she even says, I don't trust people. But she expresses herself, and it's funny because then he starts panicking. And he's just like, yeah, I'm going to have to call the police. I can't help you. And this is kind of funny. She's like, I knew it. You're just like everybody else. So then she leaves. And then the music in this film, like there's a scene where the character Sam's walking past the crime scene where Jason just got killed. And she's not aware of Jason or what just happened, but she's walking past the crime scene and she's calling her sister Tara. And then there's this humming noise I hear in the background, and I had to look it up and find what this song is, because that song, that little part with the humming, and then the scenery of just Sam walking, and then the flashing lights of the police bulbs and everything was just perfect. Sam calls Tara to say, hey, let's have dinner tonight and eat at home. And then just like Neve Campbell's character Sydney in the Scream franchise in Scream 3, she's very excessive with her security. She has a ton of locks on the door. I mean, which makes sense, but it's a little bit excessive. So she opens all these locks, or it's kind of like Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018. Not as heavy as that, but it's pretty, pretty similar. So she unlocks the door, she goes inside, and we meet Quinn, who apparently is just a sex addict. She's sleeping with many different guys. There is this funny bit where we can hear this guy screaming in the background. We really can't see his face, which was also clever. But there's this one part where the Sam character is like, hey, is that Paul in the bedroom? And then the guy's voice, he screams out, who the fuck is Paul? And I thought that was a very funny moment. So there's lots of levity here. There's some funny moments, there's some suspenseful moments, there's some horrific moments, there's some gruesome moments. This is a roller coaster ride here. Then we fast forward and we go to a party where Tara and Chad and Mindy are. And Chad is hanging out with Ethan, who is Chad's roommate. And it's a nice little funny moment between these two, because Chad is trying to get Ethan laid because he's a virgin, and Chad encourages Ethan to talk to this girl, but this girl, there's a funny moment. Ethan's like saying something like, I can't remember what he says, but he says something to the girl like, hey, you think I'm attractive or something? And then she makes this face like, yeah, you're all right. And Chad's just like, oh man, you'll get it next time. You'll get it next time. So I love that scene between those two. And then we see Tara, and it's just kind of odd because then she meets this creep, and then they're about to go upstairs, but then Chad, being the hero, presenting Hobbs and Shaw, he comes in and saves the day. I love him in this film. He definitely has more character here. And he comes in and he stops the guy from taking Kara to the room and probably doing some shady things, but he stops him, and they have a little fight, and then Sam comes out of nowhere and tases the guy in the balls, and he falls at the ground. And then they go outside, and we have another great scene amongst these characters where Tara and Sam are talking, and Tara's looking Sam in her eyes, and the directors capture it perfectly. And Tara says, you're going to have to let me go. It's like, Sam, what's your plan? You're going to stay here in New York? You're working 2 shitty jobs. It's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to have my life. What are you going to do? So I really loved that. I felt that. And then all of a sudden, she comes in, and she splashes Sam in the face with water, and that really upset me. She splashes her and says, oh yeah, you killed Richie, blah, 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 conspiracy. Sam's like, I had nothing to do with it. And moving on, they go back to their apartment that they all live in together, the core 4. And Chad tries to get with Tara, which kind of came out of nowhere because I don't think there was any connection between those two in the previous film. This kind of just comes up out of nowhere, but it's nice and it's tender, and the way the performers acted out and the way the directors captured it really worked for me. I felt it. And Chad goes in there, Tara's room, to try to comfort her, and they almost kiss, and then Quinn comes in and cock blocks Chad from getting with Tara. Then we have this other guy named Danny who lives in another building that's across from their building, and Sam just stares at Danny through the window, and then Quinn comes in like, hey, you should go and holler at that guy, and Sam's like, no, I don't want anyone in my life right now. But then come to find out later, those two are actually dating. So, dude, Sam's sitting on the steps, and then Danny shows up, and they start talking, and they start kissing, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, more characters, more development, more personalities here. I love that kind of stuff. Then the story moves along with the plot, and we have NYPD Detective Wayne Bailey, who is investigating these Ghostface murders. He shows up at Jason and Greg's apartment and finds Sam Carpenter's ID and a pool of blood in the kitchen. We don't know how that got there. Maybe Wayne planted it, because we do find out that Wayne, Quinn, and Ethan are the killers. And I've seen this film twice, and at first I thought their reasoning for wanting to get revenge, because Wayne is the father of Ethan and Quinn is Wayne is the father of Richie, and Ethan and Quinn are the brother and sister of Richie. And when that was first revealed to me at the end, I thought that was kind of lame. I was like, oh, this is just Scream 2 all over again. But the second time I watched it, I was like, they give you these little subtle hints earlier before the reveal, which I'll get into. But Wayne finds Sam's ID in a pool of blood and says, oh, you need to come in for questioning. And he starts questioning her. And then Kirby Reed is back in this franchise, which is nice to see, but she kind of shows up out of nowhere just because it's Kirby. But hey, cool with me. I like Hayden Panettiere. She's great as this character. Then Sam and Tara leave the station, while at the same time Wayne's like, hey, do an investigation on Kirby and see what you can dig up about her from the FBI offices. So that's going to lead into something later. But Sam and Tara, they walk down the street, and I'm like, I'm loving this so far, because it's all taking place in one night. Which, that would have been interesting if the entire film had taken place in one night, which I thought that's what was happening, because things are just moving along here. Chaotic. But yeah, Sam and Tara are walking down the street, and Ghostface calls, and this is kind of odd, especially once you know who the killers are, because then it's like, Ghostface calls, and it's something personal once the reveal happens. So whoever called them is like, yeah, I'm going to make you suffer and all this kind of stuff. But then the Ghostface just shows up out of nowhere and then tries to kill Tara. And I'm just like, you want to make them suffer, but then you want to kill them first, or you want to kill them? How are you? What? I don't understand. But he attacks them, or whoever, I don't know if it's Ethan, Quinn, or Wayne. It most likely can't be Wayne. It either has to be Ethan or Quinn. It's probably Ethan. And the killer chases Sam and Tara into this bodega. And this was one of the most tense, suspenseful scenes in the entire Scream franchise, or at least top 5. Ghostface comes into the bodega, and it's a funny scene, because then you got this guy where Sam and Tara cut in front of him. He's like, hey, there's a line here. And then Ghostface burst in there, and then dude's all tough, He's like, what you gonna do, man? And then Ghostface stabs the shit out of him. And everybody runs out of the store. And then the bodega owner comes up with a shotgun, tries to shoot Ghostface, but Ghostface, he's a ghost, man. He's too swift. Can't catch him or her. And Ghostface gets out of the way, and then the owner comes out, and he's like, yeah, you run out the back door. And the door's locked, and then owner's distracted, and Ghostface pops up behind the owner and stabs the shit out of him. And then Ghostface, first time in this movie, or in this franchise, Ghostface uses, well, actually no, they use guns at the end, but when they're wearing the mask, they normally don't use guns. And this has always been a horror thing, where I read somewhere where they say that, you know, you got your killer in the film, like Michael and, you know, Ghostface and Candyman. Never give them a gun, because if you give your psychopathic killer a gun, it's just gonna defeat the whole purpose of the film. It's gonna take all the suspense away, because then the killer can just get things over with easily. I've always heard that. Never give your killer in the film a gun, because it ruins the tension. But here, that is the opposite. This is a very tenseful scene. I loved it. I was in it. Just everything about it was mwah. It's flawless, because Ghostface grabs a gun and then he just blows the store owner away, and it's just like sad, and then it's very quiet, and then Sam and Tara are like trying to maneuver and they're trying to be quiet. Hey you! Sam picks up a can, and then she throws it, and then that distracts Ghostface. And I feel like the way this scene ended was funny, but it just kind of ruined the tension for me. But then it's typical Ghostface, because Ghostface is standing there and he doesn't see them, and then Sam and Tara jump up and surprise him. They tip this rack over and they throw it on top of Ghostface, which, you know, in the franchise, Ghostface is known for getting jacked up, which Scary Movie also pointed out. But they dumped this rack on him, which I thought was kind of funny, because I'm like, dude, you have a gun. You could have run. This is kind of funny, and it kind of ruined the tension for me. But I'm like, I throw my hands up in the air, and I'm like, that's typical Ghostface, man. He's always getting beat up. So then after that, we go back to Dr. Christopher's house. And he hears a knock at the door. And a lot of these characters, you know, it's a horror film, but they don't know they're in horror films. They're just being a bunch of idiots. It's like you see this strange figure at your door. You're just going to slowly approach it and then ask, who is it? It's like, bro, you better man up and be like Eddie Murphy, you know, in SNL. But he approaches the door, and then Ghostface bursts through the glass and stabs the shit out of him, and then stabs a dude, which I thought he stabbed him in the eye at first, but no, he stabbed him in the nose. But it is very gruesome. Lots of gruesome kills here. And we discover the reason why whoever the Ghostface was at the time killed the psychiatrist was to gain access to Sam's files, which doesn't really lead into anything. It's just to make her look guilty, I guess. Then we have our nice typical Scream scene where we have our core four and our brand new characters. One character I forgot to mention is named Annika, who met Mandy at the party at the beginning of the film. So she's tagging along, and we have our core four plus these new characters. And Mandy is really good in this scene. Like in the previous Scream, I was just like, oh yeah, she's fine. I mean, yeah, you know, you switch the gender of the Randy character. She's just a Randy substitute. I mean, they're related to Randy, but I mean, I don't really care. She doesn't really have her own personality.
I am not a Randy substitute. I'm my own character.
Named Ricky, who works at the video store.
It's an homage.
But in this, I really enjoyed her performance, and I really enjoyed what the directors, you know, made her do, because we have the scene, classic scene, where she's standing there and she's given the rules of this franchise and what's going on, which was nice, and, you know, she has her quirks and mannerisms. But she nailed who the killers were off the bat, which is a nice touch. When I first saw the film, you know, I didn't notice that. But then when I saw it again, I was like, huh, she actually guessed who it was. And even Ethan points that out later on in the film. Like, Mandy was right from the very beginning. She suspected us and she guessed it, you know, which I thought was very clever. That was very well done. And then we have one of our original OG characters, Gale Weathers. show up in this film.
Sydney, share with us, please. I'll share with you.
Sam does the classic Sidney Prescott, tries to punch her in the face, but Gail's like, I've done this before, so she dodges out of the way, and then Tara comes out of nowhere and strikes Gail in the face with a nice hook, and Gail quickly recovers from that punch, because then as soon as she gets hit in the face, they're having a conversation, which I thought was kind of odd. But Gail Weathers, wants to be a part of the whole investigation and finding out who these new Ghostface characters are. But Sam isn't having any of it, and neither is Tara, so they move on from Gail. We end up back at the apartment with our core 4 and our new characters. And this is where it gets kind of odd, especially when you know who the killers are, because then the Danny character is, in his apartment on the other side, and he can see Quinn through his window, or he can see, Sam and the Core 4's apartment. But he sees Ghostface in the window, which was a nice scene. He's like yelling and screaming like, "Hey, I see you, you fucker, I see you over there," which is very funny. I like Danny. Danny apparently took a picture of what was going on, of Quinn being killed supposedly, which is just odd. Quinn gets thrown out of the room and she's got her throat slit and everything, which makes no sense, because then it's like, if she's the killer and Danny was watching her being killed the whole time, how can they make that happen? I just call bullshit on that, because Danny, he's a witness, he saw everything go down. He would have, whoever was attacking her would have had to been delicate with her just to make sure they didn't hurt her or anything. So it's just like, I call BS on that, because you see her throat slit and everything, and they did it in front of somebody. They throw Quinn through the door, and I'm like, there's 5 of y'all. There's only one of Ghostface. Just jump his ass. What are you standing there for? Why are you running? But they all start running in a panic because the Ghostface has got a knife. Woo, there's 5 of y'all, man. What are y'all doing? They run through the bathroom where they see Quinn's hacked up boyfriend in the bathtub. Annika ended up being stabbed in the gut, so she was losing a lot of blood. And of course, she's kind of cannon fodder. I knew she was going to die at that point. So then Annika tries to cross the ladder. Ghostface ends up throwing her off the ladder, and she just boom, and then she hits her head on a dumpster, and they don't cut away, which was just flawless. I love the way they directed this film, and just all aspects of the action, of the character actors and their performances. Everything here with what the directors captured is top notch. After the chaotic incident, Detective Wayne shows up. He's, all sobbing and crying about his daughter Quinn, and then he confronts Sam, and he looks her dead in the eye as he's pretending like he's crying. He looks her dead in the eye and he says, "You fuck with my family, you die." And he looks her dead in her eyes when he says that. So watching it the first time, I was like, okay. But then the second time, I was like, oh, I see what you did there. Okay, that's very subtle. That's clever. I like that. So then Gail Weathers shows up, and she says she was doing some digging on Greg and Jason, and discovered that they have the secret location, which is a shrine to Ghostface. And this was a nice scene because it shows us all of the previous ghost faces and characters within this franchise and all the memorabilia. And a couple parts stuck out to me. One of them was when Sam walked up to her father's Ghostface costume and she looks at the bloody knife. And then we have another cameo from Skeet Ulrich from the original Scream. And when they did the whole, ghost father visions, whatever you want to call it, they did that in the 2022 Scream. I didn't like it. I just thought it was like, oh, it's CGI. And then it's like, you don't need him here. It's just for nostalgia. Why is this here? I mean, it's nice, fine, whatever. Skeet Ulrich, get paid, get your money. But I'm just like, for me as an audience member, I'm just like, it just feels odd. It feels unnecessary. It feels forced and nostalgia bait. But when they showed it in here, I feel like when I think about it, I feel like I think in the 2022 film, they just kind of showed Skeet Ulrich and it was a bit excessive. Whereas in this, it was like in this one little spot where you see his face in the reflection and knowing the history of the Sam Carpenter character, we know that she is a psycho. She is crazy. She has admitted it. So her seeing visions of her father is like the cherry on top. You are extra crazy when you start seeing visions of your dead dad. So seeing Skeet Ulrich in this film and his minimal amount of screen time and then how they executed it, I appreciated it more in this film. Then another scene or a moment that stuck out to me during this sequence was when they showed the TV that killed or supposedly killed Stu Macher. And when they were talking about this, you know, I've heard a lot of rumors online before this film came out. When they were talking about this scene here, it made me think, is Stu Macher going to be the killer? Is there going to be like a secret reveal here or something? Because they have to, making the next Scream film, Scream 7, they have to be leading to something here, because there are numerous points in the previous one and in this one where they mention, you know, Sam and Tara's family, you know, it's Billy is his father, and then, you know, just all of these character connections. You know, it's like they have to show the mother at some point. They have to go deeper, because that's what trilogies do. Just like in Scream 3, it's like, hey, all of the stuff that was in the past comes back to haunt you in the third film. So they definitely have to dig deeper with the whole family history, because there's stuff brewing here. There are seeds being planted.
The past will come back to bite you in the ass. Whatever you think you know about the past, forget it. The past is not at rest. Any sins you think were committed in the past are about to break out and destroy you.
Kirby and the Core 4 execute a plan to trap Ghostface, but then Kirby says Gale can't be a part of the plan because she's press, and press aren't allowed. So then Gale goes off and does her own thing, while the Core 4 and Kirby and Wayne go to try and trap Ghostface. And there's this nice moment where they're in a van, and Mandy says to Kirby, "Oh yeah, you're gonna try and trace the call." And I was thinking that too. Oh yeah, you know, that's usually what happens. You know, you try and trace the call, but then they end up hanging up, and you're like, "Oh, I lost the signal." And she's like, "Oh, I can get their location in 15 seconds." And then that shuts Mandy up. But then she still comes with, "Well, you know what happened to our father in Scream 2? He got stabbed in broad daylight in a van." And I was like, oh yeah, it's a nice little nod to Scream 2. Sam and Tara are walking. They get a call from Ghostface. And I was counting it too. I was like, you said 15 seconds. So as soon as Sam picked up that phone, I was counting in my head. And it went past 15 seconds. I was like, I swear to God, if y'all say she didn't get it, that's bullshit. But Kirby ended up finding the location of the call, and apparently it is at Gale Weathers' apartment. We have Gale, and she's with her new plaything. You know, she's got that sexual chocolate in her apartment. And she clearly doesn't care about him. She just tells him what to do, and he listens to her. There's no real chemistry there. There's no nothing. She's like, call the cops. And he's like, okay. You know, it's nothing. He's just there to get killed, even though he has all those muscles. And then apparently, later on, they reveal that Quinn is the one that attacked Gale. So you're telling me Quinn, this woman, killed Gale's boyfriend, this big, buff dude. Quinn did that. I don't believe you. I mean, yeah, she snuck up behind him. I mean, I guess it's possible, since it's like, because the scene is really good, because Gale's on the phone talking to Ghostface, and then Ghostface shows up behind the big guy, and like I didn't really get to see where she stabbed him. I mean, but yeah, if someone sneaks up on you and then stabs you, you're pretty much defenseless. So yeah, I get it. I accept it. I stand corrected. She snuck up on him, so he didn't see it coming. Gale's running around, and it's really good and suspenseful. Nice chase scene. And then Gale runs into the bedroom, and then she opens up the safe to get her gun. She retrieves it. She shoots off some shots, and we don't know if she hit Ghostface or not, but she's still on the phone with Ghostface. Now, when I was seeing this scene, I was thinking to myself, okay, why is Gale still talking to Ghostface on the phone? And then on top of that, you've armed yourself with a gun. Ghostface can't contend with that. You're safe in the bedroom. You've locked yourself in there. You have a gun. Hang up the damn phone and call 911, and then stay in the bedroom until the police arrive, and you'll be fine. But she ends up just like staying on the phone with Ghostface and playing the game and opens the door and starts walking around the apartment. I'm like, bro, that's stupid. You should have stayed in the bedroom. But then when I saw it the second time, I tried to rationalize it, and I was like, okay, when Quinn, who I assume this is, called Gail on the phone, she was talking trash about Dewey, and this made Gail cry a little bit. And so then I'm assuming that the reason why Gail is, going through the motions when she has the upper hand is she's now taking this personally. She talked bad about Dewey, so now she's not thinking clearly. She's taking this whole situation personally. So that's how I rationalize all this. So she hangs up the phone, and then she star 69s, or at least I think that's what she did. She star 69s the fucker, and the phone rings in the closet, and then she opens shots on the door. But you're just wasting bullets. If it was me, I wouldn't shoot at anything until I had a confirmed shot. You're just wasting bullets at this point. But she shoots at the door, and then Ghostface comes out of nowhere and stabs her, and then they have a fight, which is really good. And you're like, is Gail gonna make it? Is she gonna live? Is she gonna die? What's gonna happen? And it's very suspenseful. And then Gail ends up getting the upper hand. Ghostface falls on the ground because Ghostface likes getting beat up all the time. And this is kind of a silly moment because it's like, okay, Gail dropped her gun during this scuffle, and while Gail and Ghostface are on the ground, Gail looks at Ghostface's knife, and she goes for the knife. And that whole time I'm like, bro, you have a perfectly fresh gun over there. Fuck that knife. Go and get the gun, man. What are you doing? But she goes and she gets the knife, and she successfully retrieves it. And she's about to go for the stabbing blow, the final blow. And out of nowhere, Ghostface stabs Gail right in the stomach with a piece of glass. And you're like, oh, it's over for Gail, man. It's a wrap. And Gail falls to the ground. And then Ghostface is about to get that one final blow. But then Gail blocks it. And she's like, fuck you. You ain't gonna get me. And I'm like, oh, shit was about to happen. And then Sam does the dumbest shit in the world. She announces herself before she shoots at Ghostface, so then Ghostface can see her coming, and then Ghostface runs out of the room and runs away. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's understandable. She had to announce herself because it's a movie. If she would have just walked in the room quietly and picked up the gun and just shot Ghostface in the head, then there's no movie, I guess. But there's still 2 killers left, and then that would have been I think that would have been cool. If Sam had walked into the room, since there are 3 killers here, Sam could have just walked into the room instead of saying, hey, fuckface, or whatever she said, and then shooting. We could have just had like a surprise moment where you're like, Ghostface is about to kill Gail, and Gail's like, fuck you, and all of a sudden, bam, Ghostface gets shot in the head, and Ghostface falls to the ground, and they pull off the mask, and it's Quinn, and they're like, what the hell? And then or it could have been Ethan or whoever, and they're like, what the hell? And then at the end, that'll give more reason for Wayne to be upset, because he'll be like, you killed Richie, and then you killed my daughter, and da 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 da. I think that would have been cool, but they didn't go in that direction. Sam had to announce herself before she opened fire, which is dumb. But hey, I understand it. It's movie logic. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 2 different scripts with Gail, one with Gail dying and one with Gail living. But I think she lived. I think she's okay. So then the core 4 come up with a plan to trap Ghostface. They're going to go to the shrine and they're going to execute the fucker. And then we have another nice sequence at the subway station, which is very inventive sequences with this film. Very inventive. Mandy and Ethan get separated from the rest of the group. And it's a very cool scene because we see so many other iconic horror villains. We see Michael Myers. I think we see Leatherface. So many characters, I can't even remember all of them. But I thought the subway scene was a nice moment. Especially seeing so many other horror icons was very nice. And then this moment was just a creepy moment where Mandy is, she's freaking out, so she backs herself up against one of the doors, and this Ghostface just ends up staring at her. And it's kind of like what David Gordon Green did in the Halloween 2018 film with the motion sensors or the motion lights, where the lights go off, Michael gets closer. And with this, it's effective because the train, I assume, is going under a tunnel, and then the lights, it's dark, and then Ghostface looks at her, and then Ghostface gets closer and closer. But I can see that they were doing some manipulation with this as well, because it is kind of far-fetched, because I saw it the second time, not the first time, but the second time I saw that they literally made Ghostface disappear. Like, Ghostface literally disappeared during this moment. The Ghostface has supernatural powers in this film, you could say. It's the power of editing and camera trickery. But yeah, Ghostface literally disappears during this moment and then just pops out of nowhere and stabs Mandy. And I'm just like, don't you want to kill Mandy? Like, you're just going to give her like a couple stabs and then run away, and you could perfectly easily kill her right here. It's like what happened to Jada Pinkett in Scream 2. It's like in front of everyone, but no one sees it because they're in their own little world. Like, you got a guy rocking out to headphones, and then you got someone asleep and everything. And then it's even more weird because then Ethan saves Mandy, and it's just like, why? Like, I don't understand, but whatever. So then Mandy ends up surviving after being stabbed. The rest of the group goes to the location, but before they go, Sam says that Danny cannot enter because I don't know you. They go to the shrine, and we have our final battle.
We've got to lure him in. We execute him.
Wayne calls Sam and says that, oh, Kirby's off the rails. She hasn't been in the FBI, for a while because they say that she's crazy. When I first saw the film, I assumed it was Kirby because she has these little things in the film. She's very obsessed with the Ghostface killing. She shows up out of nowhere during this investigation. And then, every time she mentions, the previous Ghostface, she gets like this look on her face, and it's just kind of odd, and then she mentions, the Macaulay Culkin brother, I don't remember his name, Rory Culkin, stabbed her, in the stomach and everything, so she's still bitter about that, so these little red herrings in the film, which I thought was nice, because I completely assumed it was Kirby, but it's not. We have another nice little tender moment between Chad and Tara, but then at the same time, I'm like, bruh, a psychopathic killer's on the loose, and you want to have a makeout session? Like, what are you doing, bro? Save that until after you survive, bro. Don't get distracted. But sure enough, they get distracted. Ghostface pops out, and Chad, man, they just gave me a reason to love this guy even more. Not only does he have more character in this film, he's throwing down, man. He's like, man, you ain't about to stab me. He like actually beats the shit out of Ghostface. Like, he's dodging all the attacks, and then he like punches Ghostface to the ground. I'm like, bro, stomp the shit out of Ghostface. That's what these people keep doing in these horror films. It's like once they beat the villain's ass, they beat up the killer falls to the ground, and then they run away. And I'm like, bro, you already got the killer on the ground. Finish the job, bro. Just stomp the shit out of him. You have the advantage because now you have the high ground, bro. They're on the freaking ground. Use your legs and your feet and just stomp a mud hole in them and walk it dry. You know what I'm saying? 2 Ghostface pop out. They gang up on Chad, and it's like really cool imagery where they just like are both stabbing the shit out of Chad in his torso, and he's bleeding out the mouth. And I was like, no, they killed Chad. Oh, he's one of my favorite characters in this film. They stabbed him and they threw him to the ground, and then both Ghostface wipe off their blades at the same time, which is a cool image. Great shots in this film. Wayne shows up, and he's like, yeah, the reason why I'm doing this is because you killed my son Richie. So this ties into the first film. And so watching it the first time, I didn't like it because I was like, this just reminds me of Scream 2. This is the same thing that Debbie Salt did. She wanted revenge for the death of her son. But then when I thought about it, I was like, I like the nice little subtle touches throughout the film. And then we got the reveal of Ethan and Quinn, which at first I was like, oh, it's Matthew Lillard. He's in the crusty mask. And it's funny too because the crusty old torn up mask reminds me of Halloween 2018. Ethan gets stabbed in the mouth, which was disgusting, and Quinn gets shot in the head. Sam comes out of nowhere and stabs Wayne multiple times and he's crying like a little punk. You know, he's talking that big game earlier and now he's crying, which is what all these killers do, you know. So then Tara finishes the job and she kills Wayne and he's dead. And it was a nice little touch at the end when Sam and Tara were walking from behind this projection screen. And on the projection, it says directed by Richie, whatever his last name is. Apparently Chad is still alive, and I gave a thumbs up for that because I'm glad he's still alive. That's the end of the movie. And then I thought it was great. I didn't love this film. I thought it was a great film, though. It was a roller coaster ride of different types of things. It was funny. It was horrific. It had some good character moments, good character conversations. I think the characters had way more personality in this film than they did in the previous one, so I actually care about these people now. They really need to do something with the past coming back to bite these characters in the future. They really need, because that's what trilogies are all about. It's all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go, you know? That's what true trilogies do. You dig up the past and you bring it into the game. And them doing, them revealing all this stuff, you know, with Sam and her, and they could do something in the third film. Did she orchestrate the killings in the first one? Is she lying? You know, there's so many directions they can go in with this to where I'm intrigued. I'm down. I'm game for whatever y'all do, because this movie, Scream 6, is way better than Scream 2022. This movie has more personality. It has more gore, more action scenes, more characters with personalities, and I think it's great. Like I said, I don't love it. It's really close to me loving it, but there's just a couple problems sprinkled here and there. But I can look past that. I still have fun with the film. I still enjoy the film. One of the best Screams in the franchise, Scream 6. And then the thing I really love about this franchise is how during the end credits, before the main end credits, you know, the scrolling credits, they show each actor and they show their name and then they play, you know, a nice song. I just love that for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know how to describe that. I just love that kind of stuff in this franchise. It just makes me feel really good. And I'm the kind of guy that when I see a movie for the first time, I like to stay till the end, to the very end, until after the credits are completed. And every now and then, when you do that, you know, you learn some interesting things. You know, you'll see who's the assistant to the director, or who's the assistant to the executive producer. You'll see who's part of the catering, how many special effects supervisors a movie has, and the best grip and all this stuff that I have no idea what it is. So many freaking credits, bro. So many people work on films. It's ridiculous. But sometimes you get a nice little special Easter egg or a nice little special nugget. Mostly with superhero films, you know, you have your after credits sequence or your after credit scene. And with this, there's a nice little after credit scene. But it's very quick and it's very funny, and it had me rolling because you have Mandy going. It's probably a little deleted scene or a little deleted moment where Mandy, you know, she's at the school and talking about, you know, franchises and whatnot. And very quickly she says something about stingers at the end of movies. She's like, does every movie need to have a post-credit scene? You know, does every movie need to have that? And I laughed. I thought that was very funny because I did not expect that.
Seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing.